Hello Year 5 and welcome to Lesson 5 of your science lessons. Today we are asking the question, are all substances soluble? Are all substances soluble? So we are going to begin with our knowing more and remembering more. First question, metal is an appropriate material to use to make a mug. Metal is an appropriate material to use to make a mug. Is this true or false? Number 2, which of the following is the best thermal conductor? Which of the following is the best thermal conductor? Water, metal, plastic, or glass? Number 3, what is the name of this piece of equipment? What is the name of this piece of equipment? And number 4, what do we call all the ends of a magnet? What do we call all the ends of a magnet? You can pause the video here and write down your answers on a piece of paper. Excellent. We're going to go through the answers. So number 1 was, metal is an appropriate material to use to make a mug. Is this true or false? And it is false. It would not be an appropriate material. Number 2, which of the following is the best thermal conductor? Is it water, plastic, metal, or glass? And the answer is metal. Number 3, what is the name of this piece of equipment? What is the name of this piece of equipment? And of course, it is a stopwatch. And lastly, number 4, what do we call the ends of a magnet? What do we call the ends of a magnet? And they are called poles, North Pole and South Pole. So our question today is, are all substances soluble? Are all substances soluble? Our success criteria: I can identify examples of solutions. I can investigate whether all solids dissolve in water. I can explain why we can't see substances when they dissolve. And key vocabulary words for this lesson are solution, dissolve, soluble, and insoluble. Okay, moving on. So the question is, what happens when you put sugar in tea? What happens when you put sugar in tea? What happens when you put salt in water, which is something you might do when you are cooking food? What happens when you put salt in water? What happens when you put a bath bomb in warm water? What happens when you put bath bomb in warm water? And what happens when you put a noodle sachet in the hot water? What happens when you put the noodle sachet in the hot water? You can pause the video here and think about your answers. Good. Can you come up with a word to describe what happens to all of these substances when you put them in water? And the word is dissolve. Yes, I'm sure you all came up with that word. They dissolve in water. So we're going to look in a bit more detail at dissolving. In real life, there are lots of examples of when we put a solid into water and it will dissolve. The solid mixes with the water and a solution is formed. When a solid mixes with water and dissolves, it is called a solution. Can you give any more examples of when a solid is put in water, it dissolves, and a solution is formed? You can pause the video and see if you can come up with any. Good. Now, perhaps you came up with some of these ideas. Coffee, maybe. A drink. Salt in the sea. All of those are examples of when a solid is put into water and it dissolves. So we've just identified in our success criteria examples of solutions. If you put sugar into a coffee or tea, it dissolves and it creates a solution. The salt that occurs in the sea is dissolved. That is a solution. Sugar in drinks that we might buy is a solution. So, investigation time. So in today's lesson, we are going to investigate whether all substances can dissolve. The question is, do all substances dissolve when they are put in water? Do all substances dissolve when they are put in water? Looking at the pictures of all the equipment below, how might we investigate today's investigative question? So number 1, there's a stopwatch. Number 2, a teaspoon. Number 3, looks like salt or sugar. 4, we have a beaker. And 5, we have a tall cylinder with a scale on the side. How might we investigate today's investigative question? You can pause the video here and have a think. What could you do for an investigation? So you might do something like this. Pour 200 cubic centimeters of water into your beaker or cup. If using a cup, measure 200 cubic centimeters using a measuring cylinder. Then place 1 small spatula or spoon of your substance into the beaker or cup and stir for 1 minute. You could then record your results in the table by identifying whether the substance dissolved or not. And then repeat for other substances. You will need to pour out your last test into the bucket and start with fresh water. You will need a table to record your results. You'll need a column to list all the substances you are going to test and make space for 6. So on the table you can see sugar, salt, sand, flour, pepper, and coffee. You'll need a column to record whether the substance dissolved or not. And you'll need a column to identify whether the substance is soluble or insoluble. You can pause the video here to create your table. So our test needs to be a fair test. In every investigation, we only change one thing to make it a fair test. In this investigation, what variable are we changing? What variable are we changing? 2, what variable are we keeping the same? So the variable we are changing is the substance. The list of substances that are going onto our table. What do we need to keep the same? The temperature of the water, the volume of water, that's the amount of water, and the time that we stir, how long we take to stir. Now it's time for the investigation. Below the table is a link that takes you to the Harris YouTube website. On there, you will find, if you look for Year 5 Science Week 5, you will find this investigation being carried out. So you can follow the investigation, use the results to fill in your table. Alternatively, speak to one of your adults and they can help you collect the equipment you need and you can carry out the investigation. But if you go to the YouTube channel, you can watch the investigation being carried out and use this to fill in your table. Right, Year 5, how did you get on? So we're going to have a look at results. What did you find out? Sugar. Did it dissolve? Yes. Salt, dissolved. Sand, no. Flour, no. Pepper, no. And coffee, yes. Okay, now looking at those results, are these substances soluble or insoluble? Sugar is soluble, salt is soluble, sand is insoluble, flour is insoluble, pepper is insoluble, and coffee is soluble. Great work here, 5. Now we're going to pause here and do a learning check. What is the name of this piece of equipment? What is the name of this piece of equipment? It is, of course, a stopwatch. When salt mixes with water, we say it has... When salt mixes with water, we say it has dissolved. Well done. What variable did we change in this experiment? What variable did we change in this experiment? And that was a substance. Well done if you said substance. Do all solids dissolve? Think about your table. Do all solids dissolve? The answer is no, not all solids will dissolve. Can you give an example of a substance that does dissolve? Again, think about your table of results. Give an example of a substance that dissolves. Maybe you can think of more than one. Good, so we could have sugar, salt, coffee. All of these substances we know from our experiment dissolve. So we can identify examples of solutions. We have investigated whether all solids dissolve in water. Now, from our investigation, we know that some solids dissolve in water. But where did it go? Look at the beaker on your screen. Is there salt in this beaker of water? How would you know? There could be. Salt dissolves in water to form a transparent solution. The salt is broken down into smaller pieces and therefore we can't see it anymore. So in dissolving, does the solid disappear? Does the solid disappear? When we put sugar into water, it dissolves. Can we still see the sugar? Is it still there though? Why can't we see it? What could we do to prove it is still there? So can we still see the sugar? No. Is it still there? Yes, it is. Why can't we see it? It is broken down into such small pieces that are too small to see. What could we do to prove it is still there? Sugar tastes sweet, so we could try drinking it. We could also remove the water and see if it is still there. We can learn more about this soon. So reviewing today's learning, did we carry out a fair test? To make sure our results are focused on one element, we should make sure we do a fair test. This means we should have kept all of these things the same. The temperature of the water, the volume of water, the time we stir. Did we? What could we have done to make sure our experiment was a fair test? Made sure the water was all at the same temperature using a thermometer. So, looking at our success criteria for this lesson, we've identified examples of solutions. We've investigated whether all solids dissolve in water, and we've been able to explain why we can't see substances when they dissolve. We are now going to review the knowledge from today's lesson. Number 1, all substances dissolve in water. All substances dissolve in water. Is this true or false? And the answer is false. Well done if you said false. Number 2, when a substance dissolves, it disappears. When a substance dissolves, it disappears. Is this true or false? And the answer is false. Excellent if you said false. Number 3, we can't see a substance when it dissolves because it breaks down into smaller pieces. We can't see a substance when it dissolves because it breaks down into small pieces. Is this true or false? And the answer is true. Number 4, warm or hot water will make the substances dissolve faster than in cold water. Warm or hot water will make substances dissolve faster than in cold water. Is this true or false? The answer is true. Number 5, when a solid dissolves in water, it makes a solution. When a solid dissolves in water, it makes a solution. Is this true or false? And it is true. And lastly, number 6, if a substance doesn't dissolve in water, we say it is soluble. If a substance doesn't dissolve in water, we say it is soluble. Is this true or false? And the answer is false. A substance that doesn't dissolve in water is insoluble. Well done, Year 5. This is the end of your science lesson. Look forward to seeing you in next lesson.